I was 14 when I first understood it. My father didn't see me as a person. I was a problem to be managed, a disappointing variable in an otherwise successful equation. It was the night of his company's 10th anniversary. Morrison and Associates, the consulting firm he built from nothing into a multi-million-dollar operation. The house was full of laughter, the smell of expensive cigars, and the sound of people pretending to be important. Dad was glowing. He stood taller, spoke louder, demanding that everyone reflect his success. My sister, Claire, was 17. She was already his shadow. She talked about market positioning like other teenagers talked about music. Dad listened to her with actual respect. Then his eyes found me. "And what about you, Megan? Still drawing your little pictures?"
The room laughed.
A polite, condescending chuckle. I was taking an advanced digital design course. I was building graphic interfaces, learning code, creating things that felt real. "I'm working on UI design, Dad," I said quietly.
Right.
"Well, not everyone can understand business," he said, turning back to his partners. That became the pattern. Claire was the business mind. I was the creative one. They said it like a consolation prize, like creativity was for people who couldn't hack it in the real world of profit margins. I went back to my room, locked the door, and started coding. If I couldn't be part of their world, I would build one of my own. What Dad didn't know, what I carefully hid for 12 years, was that I was building an empire in the dark. At 16, while Claire was attending business galas with Dad, I was teaching myself back-end systems. I wasn't just drawing pictures anymore. I was mastering data architecture, algorithm development, things Dad couldn't comprehend. By 18, I was freelancing for tech startups under a fake name. I didn't want the name Morrison to help me. I wanted to see if I was actually good. Turns out, I was better than good. By 20, I sold my first app for $1.2 million. I didn't tell a soul. I deposited the money into a private account, lived in a tiny apartment, and kept working my part-time graphic design job. I let them believe I was struggling. "Megan, do you need money for rent?" Mom would ask, looking at my old clothes with pity. "I'm fine, Mom," I'd say. I founded Cascade Tech Ventures in a small basement. We didn't focus on looking successful. We focused on being essential. We built AI platforms for energy optimization, the kind of tech that Fortune 500 companies needed but didn't know how to build themselves. By 25, Cascade was making $28 million in revenue. I still drove a 10-year-old Toyota. I still wore hoodies. I wanted to stay invisible because in my family, success only counted if it looked like Dad's version. Morrison and Associates was growing unusually fast. Dad would come to Sunday dinners smelling of expensive scotch. "Business is booming," he'd say vaguely. Claire had made partner at 28. Dad couldn't talk about her without his voice swelling with pride. "Claire just landed a massive deal," he bragged one night. "That's real corporate work, Megan. Results. Not just feelings." I smiled politely. I didn't tell them that Cascade Tech had just hit $180 million in revenue. But then, I noticed something. 3 years ago, I had invested heavily in a venture capital firm called Summit Growth Partners. I was their anchor investor. I decided to dig into where my money was going. 11 days of searching led me to the truth. Morrison and Associates had a silent partner. Someone who poured $180 million into the firm 5 years ago. That investor was me. My father had been living off my money for 5 years, while dismissing me as a creative girl who didn't understand business. He used my capital for his expansion, his staff, his ego. But it got worse. The firm was rotting. Client retention was down 23%. They were over-leveraged. Without my money, Dad's company would have faced bankruptcy years ago. I called my CFO, Michael Chin. "Michael, if I pull the funding from Morrison and Associates, what happens?"
He sighed.
"It's nuclear, Megan. They collapse. Immediately." "Is the investment strategically sound?" I asked. No, he said bluntly. It's a weak investment. Pulling out is a justified business decision. Then prepare the notices, I said. We're going to the gala. Then came my 30th birthday dinner. An upscale restaurant. Mom wore pearls. Dad wore the expression of a man who'd rather be working. 30 years old, Mom said. Time flies. Welcome to your 30s, Claire teased. Ancient. Dad cleared his throat. So, Megan, still with the graphic design work? I run a software company now, Dad. I corrected. Small business? That's nice, he said, barely listening. Claire's managing teams 3 times your size, but every business is different. Then he showed me the invitation for his gala. Gold trim. Embossed lettering. We're limiting it to business associates, Megan. You'd be bored. All those executives talking shop. It's nothing personal. We just thought it would be more comfortable if we kept it professional. The invitation arrived 2 weeks later. My name wasn't on it. Claire texted me. Dad is stressed. Best if you don't show up. You know how he gets about mixing family and business. I stared at the message and smiled. They wanted professional? I would give them professional. The Sentinel Club was spectacular. 500 guests in black tie. I arrived exactly on time. I wasn't wearing a hoodie. I was wearing an emerald green designer gown and diamonds that commanded the room. The guard stopped me. You're not on the list. Call Robert Morrison, I said calmly. Tell him his daughter is here. Claire appeared, looking furious. Megan, what are you doing here? You look like you're trying to prove something. It's embarrassing. Suddenly, Richard Whitmore, the chairman of Summit Growth, stepped forward. Miss Morrison, Cascade Tech. It's an honor. Claire froze. You know her? Know her? Whitmore laughed. Megan is our most important investor. Cascade is the most innovative company in our portfolio. He walked me past the guard. Claire stood there, speechless. At 8 p.m., Dad took the stage. He talked about his vision. He thanked his strategic investor. He praised Claire. No mention of me. Then his phone rang, right in the middle of his speech. Whitmore stood up. Robert, take that call. It's important. Dad put it on speaker. It was Michael Chin. Mr. Morrison? Cascade Tech is withdrawing its $180 million investment. Effective immediately. The ballroom went silent. 500 people stared. Who authorized this? Dad stammered. Megan Morrison, Michael replied. The CEO of Cascade. And your daughter. I walked onto the stage. Hello, Dad. He stared at me like I was a ghost. You? You're the investor? For 5 years, Dad. I paid for your success. While you told me I didn't understand real business, I was the only thing keeping you afloat. I projected my Forbes profile on the screen behind him.
CEO.
$180 million company. You uninvited me because I was embarrassing? I whispered. No, you were just too blind to see that your creative daughter owned you. I walked off the stage. The orchestra stopped. People started reading the performance reports Michael had just emailed to the board. Morrison and Associates declared bankruptcy 6 weeks later. The empire built on my money vanished into thin air. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because it was a sound business decision. True success is built in the quiet spaces, where people who are underestimated do their best work. And I built it all, while they weren't looking. The news of the withdrawal hit like a physical blow. But, for me, the work was just beginning. While the gala was dissolving into whispers and panic, I was already back at my laptop. I sat in my hotel room, the emerald dress pulled around my feet. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a CEO making a necessary cut. Michael called me at 2 a.m. Megan, the Morrison board is in a frenzy. They're calling emergency meetings. They want to know who Cascade is. They still don't realize it's just you. Let them wonder, Michael, I said. Send over the official audit reports. I want them to see exactly where the money went. I want them to see the mismanagement. I spent the rest of the night looking at the faces of the employees I had just displaced. 220 people worked for my father. Talented people, wasted on bad strategy. I made a list. I wasn't just going to destroy, I was going to rebuild. The next morning, the sun hadn't even risen when the pounding started on my hotel door. I knew that knock. It was heavy, entitled, desperate. I opened the door to find my father. He looked like he hadn't slept. His tuxedo was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. "How could you?" he whispered. His voice was cracked. 5 years, Megan. You watched me struggle. You watched me celebrate. You sat at my table and smiled while you held the knife to my throat. I didn't hold a knife, Dad, I said calmly. I stepped back to let him in. I held a mirror. I gave you the capital to grow, and you used it to build a facade. You didn't win those clients. My firm introduced them to you. You didn't earn that revenue. My money inflated it. We are family, he roared. Family doesn't uninvite family from a celebration because they're not professional enough, I replied. You loved my money, Dad. You just hated the person who made it. An hour after Dad left, Claire called. She wasn't shouting. She was crying. This was the first time in my life I had heard her sound small. Megan, please. The partners are leaving. They're taking the Tech Corp contract with them. If you don't reinstate the funding by noon, we have to file for bankruptcy. Claire, look at the data I sent. The firm is a sinking ship. Even with my money, you were losing $4 million a quarter. I can't throw good money after bad. That's not how business works. You're doing this to hurt me, she sobbed. Because I made partner and you didn't. No, Claire, I said. I'm doing this because I'm the CEO of a company worth 3 times yours. I don't need your partnership. I never did. I hung up. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about the cold, hard truth. I didn't wait for the bankruptcy to be filed. I knew the talent at Morrison & Associates was being stifled by Dad's old-school ego. I sent out an internal memo to their top developers and analysts. Cascade Tech is expanding. We value innovation over pedigree. If you want to build the future, come talk to us. By the end of the day, 17 of their best people had sent in their resumes. These were the people who actually did the work while Claire took the credit in the boardroom. I met with them in a small rented office. They were scared, but they were excited. Is it true? One of them asked. Did you really build the Cascade platform yourself? Line by line, I told them. For the first time, I wasn't the creative girl in the corner. I was the leader they had been waiting for. By the 3rd day, the business press found out. Daughter pulls $180 million investment, topples father's empire. The headline was everywhere. Reporters camped outside my apartment. Bloomberg wanted an interview. Forbes wanted a follow-up. Mom called me, hysterical. How can you show your face, Megan? The neighbors are talking. Your father is a laughingstock. Mom, did you ever ask what I did for a living? Just once in the last 10 years. Silence. That's what I thought, I said. You're worried about the neighbors. I'm worried about the industry. We are not the same. I realized then that the gap between us wasn't just business. It was a complete difference in values. They cared about the image of success. I cared about the impact. 6 weeks after the gala, it was official. Morrison & Associates filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I watched the news from my office at Cascade. I saw movers carrying out the expensive mahogany desks. I saw the gold-lettered sign being taken down. It was a strange feeling. Not joy, but a profound sense of closure. The ghost that had haunted my childhood was finally gone. I had bought 4 of their most valuable patents during the liquidation. I had hired their best people. I had saved the parts of the company that were worth saving and let the rest burn. Michael walked in with a cup of coffee. What's next, boss? Next, I looked out at the Portland skyline. Next, we build something that can't be destroyed by an ego. The silence after the bankruptcy was deafening. Morrison and Associates was gone. The mahogany desks, the gold-rimmed invitations, all sold for cents on the dollar. I stayed away from the family for 2 months. I needed to breathe. I needed to lead. Cascade Tech was growing at a pace that was almost frightening. We moved into a new glass-fronted office in the heart of the city. Every morning, I walked past the lobby and saw the faces of the 17 people I'd hired from Dad's firm. They didn't look like corporate drones anymore. They looked like innovators. But the guilt, it lingered in the back of my mind. Not because of the business, but because of the silence. My phone hadn't buzzed with a family text in weeks. No birthday wishes. No check-ins. Just the cold vacuum of a bridge I had burned to light my own way. Then one rainy Tuesday, my phone rang. It was Dad. He didn't sound like the lion who roared in boardrooms anymore. He sounded old. Tired. "Megan, I'm at the old house. I'm packing up. Can you come?" I drove to the suburbs. The mansion looked smaller than I remembered. There were for sale signs in the front yard. Most of the furniture was gone. I found him in his old study. He was sitting on a packing crate, holding a small, framed drawing. It was one of my little pictures from when I was 12. A rough sketch of a digital interface. "I found this in a box," he said quietly. He didn't look up. "I remember laughing when you showed it to me. I told you it was a waste of time." "I remember, Dad. I've spent 60 days looking at Cascade's patents," he whispered. "I don't even understand half of what you built. But I understand one thing now. You didn't just build a company. You built a future. And I was just a relic of the past." Claire was there too, but she wasn't wearing her power suit. She was in a simple sweater, her hair tied back. She looked human. We sat on the back porch, watching the rain hit the empty pool. "I hate you for what you did," she said. But there was no venom in her voice. Just honesty. "I know," I said. "But I'm working now at a nonprofit, managing their operations. No boardrooms. No ego. Just work." She looked at me. "I spent my whole life trying to be the person Dad wanted. I never stopped to ask if I actually liked business. I just liked his approval. And now," I asked, "now, I'm tired, Megan. But for the first time, I can sleep at night." We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. But the air between us had cleared. The golden child and the problem variable were finally just sisters. I realized that destroying Dad's firm wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. I launched a new initiative at Cascade. We called it the Architect Program. We started funding young developers from ignored backgrounds. Kids who were creative but told they didn't understand business. I sat in on the first meeting. I saw a 14-year-old girl in the back, hiding behind her laptop, coding something brilliant while the adults ignored her. I walked over to her. "What are you working on?" She looked up, startled. "Just some little pictures, ma'am." I smiled, but it wasn't a dismissive smile. In this building, we don't call them little pictures. We call them the foundation. Keep building. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was no longer the girl in the dark. I was the light for the next generation. Dad and I started a new tradition. Once a month, at a small cafe in Portland. No suits. No business talk. At first, it was awkward. We didn't know how to talk to each other without a boardroom table between us. "So, the new AI platform?" he asked during our third meeting. "We're calling it Gaia," I said. "It optimizes energy grids in real time." He nodded slowly. He didn't try to give me advice. He didn't compare me to Claire. He just listened. "I'm proud of you, Megan," he said. The words were heavy. They felt like they cost him a lot to say. "Thanks, Dad," I replied. "But I didn't do it for your pride. I did it because it needed to be done." He smiled.
A real smile this time.
"I know. That's why you succeeded where I failed." I stood on the roof of the Cascade building, looking out over the city. My father's empire was a memory. My sister's path was her own. And I was no longer invisible. The girl who was uninvited from the party had built a city of her own. I still drove my old Toyota. I still wore my hoodies. Success didn't change me. It just gave me the power to be exactly who I always was. Logic over ego. Impact over image. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the twilight. A new line of code. A new problem to solve. I wasn't a variable anymore. I was the equation. And for the first time in my life, the math was perfect.